Welcome to the Movies to Watch Before You Die podcast. My name is Gab, and I am here with my co-host,
Dylan.
And we are doing a very different type of episode today. In previous episodes, you have heard us discuss some of our favorite movies. Today, for the first time, we are talking about one of my favorite movies, which happens to be a documentary. Dill, I have to say, I'd never thought that we would be talking about a documentary when we first started.
You know what? I have no problem with doing documentaries because at the end of the day, it's all narrative storytelling. It's just fiction versus nonfiction.
Yeah,
so there are plenty of documentaries, like we were talking about it after recording last week. And I think that, this may be the first documentary, but I definitely don't think it'll be the last. And who knows? That. Maybe I've already in my mind picked out a documentary for next week.
Oh my God, it could be. Well, that's exciting. I love documentaries. But yeah, this was my choice. And the documentary that we are going to be talking about today is from the 2017 CrossFit Games called The Redeemed and the Dominant. Dylan, before we get into this, why don't we just tell people real quick why they should be listening to us?
Yeah, smooth transition there. The reason you're listening to me is because I went to film school for film, video, and interactive media. I was a video editor with Major League Baseball and a couple other positions here and there, but mostly just because I love movies just like you do, and I'm gonna talk a lot about them. So open up your ear holes, and I'm sliding those words in. Gab, why are they listening to you?
That got weirdly sexual. So I think
it was meant to be.
So I'm sliding into your ear holes. Okay, Dill. Some people are into that. I feel like I have the most credentials to be talking about this documentary in particular because I am a former actor. So I did go to school, get my degree in acting. I did have a short-lived professional career in the industry. And now I am a fitness professional, CrossFit athlete, as well as newly certified level 1 CrossFit trainer. I actually don't think I'm allowed to use the word certified, but I am officially, I have passed my exam. I am a level 1 CrossFit trainer. And the reason that I got involved in CrossFit at all is because of this documentary series.
Now, I do feel like we have to, get into the next segment, obviously. But before we do, I want to ask you, because this is a series of documentaries. This is not the first in the series.
Correct.
Why did you pick this one out of all the ones that you could have picked, if you don't mind me asking? I know that you had talked with, I assume, your squadron over there.
Yes. Yeah. The group chat turned into a group FaceTime to discuss which documentary we should talk about on the podcast. Shout out to Corey and Haley. So the reason that I went with this is the second documentary of, I believe, 6 or 7. And the reason I picked this one is because it's early enough in the history of the documentaries that you're kind of still seeing the evolution of the games, but the athletes that are discussed are still relevant today. They're all still competing today. Whereas the first one, most of those athletes at this point are retired. And so it's kind of exciting to talk about athletes that we will be seeing compete again, or that I just saw compete when I went to Miami for Wadapalooza. So, we'll kind of talk about all that, but for the most part, it's just the earliest documentary that it contains athletes who are still relevant today.
Okay. So Gab, then I feel like I should throw it on you because you're the expert here. I feel like there's a reason that this is the only time I've ever mentioned that I work on this podcast, at least specifically in sports video for sports editing, because I was like, I guess it matters more specifically with this.
Sure.
But I guess it's time. Do you want me to talk about what this is about then?
Yeah, so why don't you give the brief overview? We'll go to the IMDb, and then I'll give a little bit more context.
What's this all been about? What am I working toward?
You think you know everything about me, don't you?
I dive at your bottom. I bloody well ought to.
The super simplest explanation is that this is just telling you about the 2017 CrossFit Games, sponsored by Reebok. And it chronicles a lot of athletes in their time there, and very specifically for the weekend of the CrossFit Games, I would say. That, I don't want to get spoilery, but that's what I would say. Yeah. But we will get spoilery.
Yeah. Of course. And honestly, I mean, at this point, it's like spoiling the 2017 Super Bowl, right? It's like, if you didn't know who won by now, it clearly doesn't matter to you.
I have it recorded, Gab. Don't tell me.
So why don't you go ahead and let us know what IMDb has to say?
Yes, the IMDb plot summary says elite athletes take on a series of grueling tests to vie for the title of fittest on Earth. Follow the drama as they endure the unknown and unknowable during 4 of the most intense days of competition in CrossFit Games history.
I love that. I love that. So let me give you a little bit of background about, because sometimes I think people who are listening may be like, I don't want to sound like I am CrossFit's lawyer and I'm trying to defend it, right? So I want to give you some context about where I fit in this whole thing and how I got interested in this, and and kind of take it from there. So
I don't know why it feels like you're defending Scientology right now.
I know.
The way you're talking
I know.
about it, you're like, listen, just let me get this out there.
It's not a cult. So I have been a fitness professional for 8 years now. And up until about 1 year ago, I always thought that CrossFit was stupid because people got hurt and it's not safe and it's, like a cult. And for some reason, that's kind of the message that I think a lot of people have about CrossFit. And
let me just cross all those things off my notes.
Dumb, injuries, stupid. But what I didn't know about the sport is that, like any other sport, the season culminates in this big, like the Super Bowl of fitness, right? The World Series of Fitness called the CrossFit Games. And what I didn't know is that athletes show up to the games and they don't know what they have to do. They have no idea. So they spend all year training and they show up. And some years they're like, all right, get in this canoe and paddle for 6 miles. Some years they're like, all right, we're going to do cyclocross where you're going off-roading on a mountain bike. Sometimes it's archery. Like there's just all these components that they have no idea. And they just have to spend their season training to be the most well-rounded athlete for whatever the hell they may get thrown at them.
Well, because we're getting into it, did we say that this is opinion time?
Oh, no, we didn't. But I this was more of like, let me give you a background. So before we get to opinion time, that was my long-winded way of saying. This was
background time. Okay.
Yeah, this is background time. This is why I got into CrossFit.
Yes.
I loved the idea because, if you're a baseball player, if you play third base and you do really well all season, that's awesome. But when you get to the World Series, you're playing third base.
It'd be weird if in the World Series they were like, today you're catching.
Yeah, like we're all switching positions.
We need you in the stand selling popcorn today.
Right. The popcorn guy is going to be coming down and playing the infield. You just know what your job is. You know what you have to do. The game doesn't change. The rules are the same. But in CrossFit, these athletes have to be ready for absolutely anything. And sometimes the events are things they do in training every day at their gyms. And sometimes it's something absolutely out of control, like an obstacle course where they're climbing ropes and going. And it's just, you have to train. The goal is to train to be ready for the unknown and unknowable, right? Whatever the hell is going to get thrown at you. And I think that as an athlete, it was really cool to think, okay, well, I'm a good runner and I'm kind of strong. So if I could do those two things, then maybe I could work on my handstands. Maybe I could learn how to do, like, it sort of makes available all these things that at one point, I think when we're young, we kind of think, well, I never did gymnastics, so I can't do a handstand. But like as an adult, I'm like, holy shit, now I can do a handstand,
Yeah, I'm still not interested in doing handstands either way, but yes.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But, I found it so fascinating and interesting. And one of the lines that really stuck with me from early on was that the idea of being the best CrossFitters can outrun the weightlifters and out weightlift the runners. And it's like, yeah. You can be good at everything. You can have it all. You can be strong and fast and agile and acrobatic. You can have all of it.
See, you like CrossFit for the same reason that I used to be a big fan of Giselle and I used to watch RuPaul's Drag Race. And the reason I liked RuPaul's Drag Race of reality shows is because you can't be great at one thing. You sort of have to be great at everything in order to truly win.
Yes. CrossFit is just a drag race.
As you were describing it, you sort of, and this is obviously much more of your passion. I am by no means a CrossFitter. But what I would say is part of me would watch and be like, I'm somebody who watches a lot of sports documentaries, but more often it's on sports that I know. So like,
sure.
If I watch a documentary about football, I know football somewhat. Watching a documentary about CrossFit and not knowing anything about it, I was very surprised to hear them say like, and we just came up with the events for this year. I'm like, that's a little weird, but okay.
Yeah.
But hearing you describe it, it does make it a little more interesting. At times, it sort of gave me the same vibe as like, and it's obviously not the same extremes, but it sort of is a little bit American Ninja Warrior-esque.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. There's parts of that in there. Absolutely. So the idea is that there's weightlifting, right? And we see that with like the 1 rep max snatch that they do. There's gymnastics where they're doing like the ring muscle ups and the handstands and stuff like that. There's endurance where they do like long efforts where they go on like a long run, 1.5 mile run out, mile swim, 1.5 mile run back. There's strongman where they're doing things like throwing the things over the hay bale.
Which the hay bale thing seemed fucked up.
Crazy,
it reminded me
right?
of in Saw 2 when they throw her into the pit of syringes and they're like, find the key. I was like, ugh, good luck with that.
Honestly, and some of them were like, yep, I'm allergic to hay, but what are you going to do? You know, and that's the thing, like they train and do that event in their CrossFit workouts during the season. Like they have to do up and overs over large things, but like hay, like no one's practicing on hay. That's just a whole nother.
It really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Total non sequitur. It just, you made me think of, because I didn't really notice people being allergic to hay, but there used to be a football player named Donnie Edwards who was allergic to grass.
Oh, shit.
And he just wore long sleeves in every game and gloves. And I'm like, he must have been really hot during some of these games, but it's better than just being horribly itchy, I guess, or whatever would happen to him.
Jesus Christ, he must really love football. But
or money.
You know, or money, that too.
Or money. Yeah.
A triathlon, right? We all know triathlons, swim, bike, run, came about because a runner, a cyclist, and a swimmer wanted to know who was the best athlete of the three of them. So they did one long competition to see who was the best. And I feel like CrossFit just kind of takes that with the CrossFit Games to a whole nother level, where now we're introducing all these other components. But I think,
can't you just picture those three, though, sort of having like the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup discussion? You got your swimming in my cycling. You got your running in my swimming.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, the last thing I want to say about this before we get to opinion time is that I think what's really fascinating about this to me is that you could go right now and join a CrossFit gym. And we'll talk about how the process works. But this Friday is the beginning of the 2023 CrossFit Open. So over 5 weeks, there are going to be 5 workouts released, one every week, and you can go to your CrossFit gym and you can try it, and you can submit your time. And if you're in the top whatever percent, you'll move on to regionals. And then if you're in the top percent of there, you'll move on to quarterfinals. And then eventually you could make it to the CrossFit Games. And obviously the people who make it are professionals. They get paid to do this. They're sponsors, but like over 400,000 people all over the world, their season starts on Friday, and everything you've been doing all winter has been just trying to prepare you for whatever workout comes out on Friday. And on Friday, all these gyms are going to have Friday night lights, and all these people all over the world are going to be doing the same workout. And typically in the CrossFit season, that doesn't happen. Like you could go to a CrossFit gym on Long Island and do a workout, and I could go to one in the city, and your gym is going to program a workout that's totally different from my program. It's not like in Orange Theory where the workouts are the same from corporate to every Orange Theory in America and beyond. You know, if you own a CrossFit gym, it's your responsibility to program for your gym to try to get them ready. So there becomes like this gym versus gym competition versus individuals. And I just think it is so uniting and so much fun. And it's literally like a professional sport that anybody can compete in. It's like if the NFL was like, all right, you can make a team and try to make it to the Super Bowl if you want to, you know?
You clearly have not watched enough NFL movies, because this is the plot of Invincible starring Mark Wahlberg as Vince
I have
Papale.
not.
He walked onto the Eagles.
That's dope. So anyway, that's all I have to say about this. Let's get to opinion time.
In this critic's opinion,
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Well, I have a right to my opinion, and my opinion is you have no right to your opinion.
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I guess I'll go first, since we know, I mean, not that I haven't done enough talking, but we kind of know where I stand. I love this movie. I think it does.
No,
Can you believe it? It gets a little bit into the performance enhancing drug aspect. Ricky Garard was caught using performance enhancing drugs. He came in 3rd place. He had his title removed. He has been suspended for 4 years. He actually just came back.
Is a very harsh punishment.
Yeah. He just came back last season. We actually saw him in person at Wadapalooza. We were eating lunch like 3 feet from him. That's the other cool thing about CrossFit. These athletes are like just people. So when we went to Wadapalooza in Miami, which is a CrossFit event.
Is he like a pariah in the CrossFit community, though?
I would think so.
Because they made it sound that way.
I know. Pat Vellner is my favorite athlete. He's the one that came in third. He came in fourth originally, but when they suspended Ricky, they moved him to third, the redheaded guy.
Mhm.
And I see the two of them on the stage together, and I'm like, he's got to hate him, right? Like, he's got to be like, fuck Ricky Garrard.
We were watching and we said Patrick Vellner reminded us of like Tobey Maguire mixed with Rupert Grint. Like,
Okay,
if Ron
I
Weasley
could
and
see
Spider-Man had a baby, it'd be
I
Patrick
could
Vellner.
see it. I love Patrick Vellner. My friend Haley loves Brent Fikowski, who is equally as like endearing. He's very tall. He's so funny. All of them are, but that's the thing. They're like regular people. So we were at Wadapalooza in Miami. And you know, we'd go out to dinner and we'd just be sitting next to them and we'd be like, hey, what's up? And they're like, hey guys, you know, because they're celebrities to us, but not in real life. So they're just normal. Like it's such a fun community.
It's so interesting because this is so much your version of Mask of the Phantasm in the sense that like this is a community you're part of, that you're such a big fan, much in the sense that I was like, oh my God, voice actors, you know, they're such a big deal to people who know voice actors. Like if Patrick Vellner was at the table next to me, I'd be like, and like, hello,
right. Right. And that's the thing, like so many of my friends from fitness are going to listen to this episode who have never listened to our podcast. What's up, Haley? I'm talking to you. Who don't give a shit about any of these movies, right? But we just love this. We live and breathe and eat this. But anyway, so it gets into a little bit of the performance enhancing drug thing. I think a lot of people believe that CrossFitters are, I've actually had people say to me, oh, they're all on drugs, and I really don't believe that they are. Go ahead.
I will say I don't even think the movie does a good job of telling me that they're not on a lot of drugs. The movie is going out of its way to, they do a mix of things. So at first you have a couple of commentators and executives of the sport who are saying, no, there's not really any drugs. There's no steroids, but you know, they don't tell me a lot about the testing. As from what I got from the movie, which, you know, I'll talk more about something with the movie and something with what you had said a minute ago. But with what I had gotten from the movie, they test once a year before the games, it seems like. And the testing is not quick enough to prevent somebody like Ricky Garrard from competing in the games, which is like, you know, very shocking to hear.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, a lot of the time you find out before the season, oh, this player in the NFL is suspended for 4 games, you know. My mind goes straight to the Patriots because I'm a huge Pats fan. Julian Edelman gets suspended 4 weeks for performance enhancing drugs. They don't wait until like after they won the Super Bowl and they say he's suspended for the next 4 games.
Yeah, or 4 years.
Yeah, the 4-year thing, I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty harsh punishment. But the other thing that they do that, like, one, their logic was, well, you know, you wouldn't want to do steroids because you'd assume your peers aren't doing steroids. And like, you know, you'd be a jerk then. You don't want to be a jerky jerk face, do you? You don't want to be like that. And every single person is like, no, I don't do no steroids. Matt Fraser saying it, tia-clair Toomey, all the people whose names end with daughter.
Sarah, yeah, the daughters.
We were like, how many, whose daughter is this? How many of them are there?
So many now.
But you get to a point where you find out that Ricky Garrard was doing steroids, which quite frankly, they might have been better off leaving out of the movie because it just invalidated the argument they made the entire movie. Because this guy, again, you have athletes going out of their way to say, sure, there's steroids in the sport, which already is invalidating what all the executives and commentators are saying. Every one of the athletes who you asked, do you do steroids? No. Are there steroids? Yeah, of course there's steroids, but nobody at the top level is doing steroids. Cut to, in third place, guy who's doing steroids. And they go back to it and they do make him look like an ass because they show,
yeah, they do.
They showed him going, do you do steroids? And they were cutting through, it's like, you know, somewhat of a montage of people going, no, no, no. And they let his answer play out. And he's like, no, I couldn't look my father in the eye, my brother, my step aunt's cousin. And like, he went on for a couple of minutes and I was like, oh,
yeah. But
at the same time, you're then, you know, you have all these other people you're showing me immediately go, no, I would never do steroids. They're saying it, you know what I mean? There's no reason that I can believe them now because I had no reason not to believe Ricky Garrard at the beginning of the movie when you showed me he was saying he didn't do steroids.
Sure.
So I think it's just like, an unfortunate happenstance.
Yeah. And I get that. And listen, you know, it's funny, like we met a lot of our favorite athletes at Wadapalooza and a lot of them were like some of these, you know, a lot of the women are very big and muscular, obviously, right? And like I think that a lot of them have like fake eyelashes and they like fake tan and they wear a lot of makeup because you aren't like the most feminine walking around with giant muscles. Yeah, and you know what? To somebody like me in the community, I'm like, I want to look like that. Sign me up. But like, I can understand where outside the community, when you're just walking around in the world, you might want to like extra femme it up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But some of them had really bad skin, and it kind of makes you think like, do they have bad skin because they're always sweaty and they're like rubbing their face on the floor, or do they have really bad skin because they're doing steroids? Like, I don't know. But at the same time,
people, like some of the men you see with the giant, are these deltoids up here?
Those are traps.
So close, Dylan.
So close.
You see them
right here.
Physically so close, but
Very
you see
close.
them with the giant traps, and you know, there's no like specific workout just for your traps. So like, that's always the thing that I have a friend, Ian, who's pretty into his weightlifting. He's got his own little gym he has set up at his house. He calls it the Pit. And he will tell me, he's like, no, the first thing that I always see that is immediate steroids to me is those giant traps, those giant unnatural looking traps.
You know what's crazy though, Dill? First of all, there are a million workouts for your traps. But second of all, like in CrossFit, we do a lot of overhead, whether it's like straight up overhead or like snatching. And my traps have gotten tremendous in like the 6 months I've been training like this. Like,
but you don't have like unnaturally huge traps, Gab.
No, but that's straight up muscle right there. You see that?
Yes,
I'm flexing.
but the point I'm making is those people who have it like where your neck is you're starting to look more like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. You know what I mean?
Sure. I get it, but I don't think a lot of those guys look like that because, like,
not
Matt
a lot
Frazier doesn't look like that.
Yes, and there is an extent, you know, and it's another argument they try and make. Well, it's an argument that they make against themselves. Lance Armstrong didn't look like he did steroids, and it's like, you're not making this any better. And like another one of the people who works for CrossFit, he said, well, yeah, you know, you're tested once a year, and you know they know what to do to like have it cycle out of their system by the time they're tested. I'm like, you're just telling me like, yeah, they probably do steroids, but they didn't do it today. Right. Like, I'm like, so is Ricky Gerard just dumber than the rest of them?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't love
if you're listening, Ricky Gerard, I think you're wonderful. Don't crush me.
I think he's a villain. I always call him the CrossFit villain. I don't love the argument, and you're right. They don't do a great job of showing how they test. But to be honest with you, CrossFit only recently got good at even like I mentioned, we do the open, right, where everybody submits their scores. They only recently started making you submit a video. So you could just be like, yep, I did that in 3 minutes. And like, I'm the best. I'm the number one. And there's just no proof. Like the only proof you have are the people in the room. You're not going to get
very far once you have to do it in person. But yeah, you could.
Well, that's the thing. One of my friends said that Wadapalooza, which is not a CrossFit sponsored event, like I guess it used to be, and now it's not. I'm not really sure what the details are, but all of the famous CrossFit athletes compete in this. And it's like a fitness festival in Miami. And it used to be like not that long ago, you didn't have to submit. So there are divisions, right? And what we're looking at are the elite divisions, but like you and I could compete if we just do the open and get in. But like people were submitting these times to get accepted into the open or into Wadapalooza, and then they would be on the competition floor, like unable to do any of it. Exactly. So they've only recently started getting better with that. So I don't know a lot of the stuff around testing. But
I will say, it seems somewhat amateurish in that sense. You know what I mean? And
yes,
part of me wanted to be like, oh, it seems amateurish that they don't know what they're doing until they get there. But you know what? It's just a part of the sport. You know what I mean? Which is a fair
inherently
thing.
Part of the sport.
You know, that was one of those things that I had to like, okay, I can let that go because it makes sense that that's just part of that sport. You know what I mean? There are certain things that I didn't let go. And, you know, I'm sorry, Haley and Corey, you may be disappointed by some of the things I'm about to say, but Gab, your description of the open, the regionals is more backstory than this movie gave me, which I was very disappointed by because I kept, you know, I know a couple names that I said by the end there, but I feel like we would have been so much better off if I had watched the first one, because I'm hoping that the first one would have given me more description of the events or more description of something. And so I felt like, I'm sorry, you were about to...
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I actually watched the first one literally the moment I told you to watch it and realized not only does it not give any more backstory about the games, it is specifically about the 2015 games in the same way this is about 2017. And I just like didn't know that many of the like so many of the athletes are just irrelevant that I was like, it's not even going to be fun to talk about them. You know what I mean? So that's why we went to this one.
Again, I'm not watching 2019 or 2016, so they don't have to be relevant today, for me personally.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I was disappointed by is, one, it didn't tell me like, how did they get here? Because like, I compared it to American Ninja Warrior. And one of the things that American Ninja Warrior does to like even a hokey extent is like, every time somebody comes up, they're going to give you 2 minutes. He's an army veteran who had both his legs blown off, but he attached Frankenstein way some other person's legs, and then he trained them to a hellish extent. You know what I mean?
You get a backstory.
They showed me like 30 seconds of Matt Fraser training in his basement, or like they'd be like, they're from Australia. And then it says Australia on screen, and I'm like, okay, maybe we're going to get deep into this now. And then it was like, stock footage of Australia and back to the competition. I was like, son of a bitch. Like,
yeah. It's definitely meant for people who like already have an understanding of how it all works. It's
not very
specifically
accessible
about
to people outside of CrossFit.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, even the events, it didn't describe the events enough, because at first it was like multiple events are happening on one day, and there was a second that I was like, is all of this on one day? And then finally they did say, again, this is not early in the movie, it's probably like an hour in, they're like, we're finished with day one of this weekend. And I was like, oh, like I was like, but you got to tell me that.
Yeah.
I don't have many problems with the sport aspect either. Once I accept that this is their sport, I'm not going to tell them like, no, you should not do it this way. That's wrong, because that's just how the sport is played. It's like if I had you watch a documentary about football and you were like, why do they use a pigskin? That's stupid. Like, you'd be like, well, I can't change that. That had nothing to do with, the creative choices of the movie. There were plenty of creative choices, though, that I didn't like. But before I get to that, you know what? There is one more thing about the sport that I will say, because it goes back to like cheating, and we were talking about steroids. There's another thing where, one, you had, I don't know what the name of it is, but they're hammering the thing, and it's like a 20-foot hammer thing.
Yeah.
And we see it, the competitors see it, the judges see it. They're clearly, you're just supposed to bring a hammer down. And let me describe this, because most of you probably did not watch this movie. It is something where they're like on an elevated platform. They got a thing between their legs that is below them. They're bringing a sledgehammer down between their legs, which is already terrifying. And they're trying to knock this thing backwards for 20 feet, which looks fucking exhausting. Like, the athleticism is obviously very impressive in it. But then you see some motherfuckers out there who are like, oh, wait, you know what I can do? Use the edge of my sledgehammer to hook the bottom and just pull it a little bit every time when I come down. And it's clearly just like, who was the head of CrossFit? Dave Castro, I think was his name, is basically just like, well, we didn't see that when we were practicing this. And it's like, that's all you got? Like, maybe you should disqualify the people who did that from this event.
Yeah.
Or not give put them behind everyone else at least. Because I was just like, the Ricky Gerard thing, sure, maybe you don't get the drug test until afterwards. You put a big asterisk next to it, that's fine. You watch them do what they're not supposed to do. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think inherent in the sport, and Corey and I actually competed in our first CrossFit event this past weekend. Not that what we did is anywhere near the games, but I will say it is inherent through the sport. Every participant has a judge. And sometimes there are judges who are very lenient. And sometimes there are judges that are hard asses, and there will be standards like your hip crease has to pass your knee. And some people say parallel, or they see parallel, hip crease parallel with the knee. And they're like, okay, that's good. And some people are like, no, it has to be below. So it kind of just depends on your judge. And I think the judges probably weren't briefed on what is considered cheating and what is not. So it's like more of like a Dave Castro thing where like the event just wasn't fully thought out and realized.
Yeah. He seemed to be somewhat poor at his job in that respect to me.
Yeah.
And
well, he has been fired, hardcore fired.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad to hear that. I don't know why I thought he was this all powerful commissioner like a Roger Goodell in the NFL. The other thing was, and this was a huge judging error. Cara Webb, I think was her name, did three less than she was supposed to finish. She's supposed to get to 75. And the judge, you see the judge go, 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 go. The judge is telling her she's done. And then the other competitors are like screaming at her like, you're not done. You didn't do 3, which how they were able to count down how many she did while doing this, I have no idea.
Well, I think every 3 you moved your bar a certain amount.
More sense.
And so she had like 10 yards left on her football field of work.
Yeah, but that's why, again, I was just like, and she was a very good sport about it in the movie, but I'm like, again, this looks very amateurish on the sport. That's
Yeah.
why it's upsetting.
Yeah.
You know, and it'd be one thing if it was just like, if you told me that in some way the sport wants Kara Webb to win or something like that, I'd be like, oh man, they really have to overcome now that the sport is doing it. And it doesn't. It just seemed like they fucked up. But I would say that's probably my last thing about the actual officiating or actual games that I had a problem with. And then there are just like technical things that I would, you know, note to myself about documentary filmmaking and editing.
Sure.
The first thing is, from an audio mix standpoint, it is so hard to hear what is being said at times.
Yeah.
Because they are blasting this Dark Knight Rises-esque soundtrack of like bomb, 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 bomb. And I'm like, God damn it. And like they make a point of having, there's commentary at times that you can't really hear.
Mhm.
And the commentators are part of this documentary. And I'm like, they sound like they're good at this. Let me hear them. Let me hear
Yeah.
them a little bit, just a little snippet. And you really can't. And sometimes you can't hear what the people are saying. And that, you know, that has nothing to do with the people. That's just like, you guys put the music too loud. Just crack that bad boy down a little bit.
Sure.
Another thing was, I just felt that it focused on too many people. Like,
Okay.
this probably could have focused on just Matt Fraser,
Mhm.
Patrick Vellner, tia-clair Toomey,
Hmm.
and Kara Webb. You know, maybe
Yeah.
you put in some more people, like, you know, Live Long and Prosper. She's one of the daughters. I'm not sure which.
Sarah Sigmund's
Simmons'
daughter. Sigmund's daughter. Yeah.
Sigmund's daughter.
Love her.
You know, that would have been fine, but it felt like because it focused on so many people, and this was a problem that Giselle and I both had, that we sort of didn't know anyone.
Sure. Yeah.
And if it had said like Matt Fraser, you know, they set up going into this, they're like, he's won 3 years in a row already. Like, we know that this guy is a beast at this sport. So you knew like this is a guy to follow. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
have some, you know, they had that brief snippet of footage of him at home in his basement training. You know, I would love to have seen Matt Fraser, and they show, you know, his family celebrating with him at some point. Tell me more about those relationships. How did he get into CrossFit?
Yeah.
You know, does he wake up at 3 a.m. every day so that he can, you know, lift up a bale of hay over his head and carry it 500 feet at a full sprint? Like, I want to know, you know, because that's important, you know. Patrick Vellner also, I will say, it's just, maybe it's just a, you know, an accessibility of the sport thing. At one point, they were like, does Patrick Vellner look like he's on steroids?
My favorite part of the whole movie is what you're about to say.
And they're like, one time I was told I looked like a spectator that like got lost on got lost in here. And I'm like, this guy looks like a Greek statue. Like, every one of these people looks like they were sculpted from some sort of clay. You know what I mean? They do not, like, nobody looks like, you know, they're out of shape, certainly, in this sport.
That's so funny. I love that. Yeah, I look, people laugh and say I look like a lost spectator that wandered out onto the floor.
Yeah. The other thing, I just got confused also because they make a huge point of showing at the end, it is Tia versus Kara in
Yep.
the last event. And they, you know, they make it sound, this is coming down to last event. Kara is 6 points behind her. And then they show Kara win that event. And in my head, I was like, oh shit, she just won it. And I think that's also because I forgot you'd already spoiled it for me in a text earlier.
Yeah. Oops.
But I thought Kara had just won it. And this is another thing of making Dave Castro seem like a really shitty professional here.
Oh, I know.
He calls them both out, like we're at the end of a boxing match, and says that, you know, Tia won. That's great. How did she win if she lost that event and she was only ahead by 6 points? And again, that goes back to them not explaining the point system to me.
Yeah.
At one point, it said like, "Oh, I won that event. I got 100 points," and I'm like, "How many you need? Like, what does that mean?"
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's just
Right.
like, you know, at least if I'm watching America's Game, it shows me America's Game is a series of NFL documentaries about the Super Bowl winner every year. At the end of, if they're talking about a game, they'll show me what the score was at the end of the game, so I can see like, oh, this person won.
Mhm.
They don't, you know, show me a leaderboard at the end
Yeah.
of games. They do
Yeah.
it occasionally, but not enough for me to like understand what the fuck's happening.
Yeah, it is a little confusing, and I'll give you that. And I think what's really interesting, and I think it speaks to the sport, and like I was saying, kind of the accessibility and like the well-roundedness of the athletes. But it's so interesting. The people who win typically don't come in first in any of the events. Like,
Yeah.
because
And
people
but
that come
goes
in
back to being a jack
first-
of all trades. You know what I mean? If
Right.
you're just the strongest guy, you're not going to win because there were so many endurance type things or things
Right.
where you do need some speed there.
Yeah. But yeah, the point system can be confusing. It has since been changed. So the point system as of 2020 is very different. But yeah, I agree. And I think because I'm so invested in the sport now, I sort of watch it for those other reasons. But as somebody coming in like with a blank slate, not really knowing about CrossFit, it didn't really give you a lot of insight into like how it all works.
Yeah, and I watch a lot of sports documentaries. You know what I mean? My mind goes to The Price of Gold, which is a great 30 for 30 about Tanya Harding and what's her name? Nancy Kerrigan? Yes. And you don't need to know ice hockey because it's, maybe it's just that ice hockey is more straightforward too. At the end, judges hold up cards who had higher cards.
That's not ice hockey. That's ice skating.
Oh, I said ice hockey multiple times too.
Twice.
You know what? Tanya Harding, she was doing some ice hockey type moves on Nancy Kerrigan. But
yeah,
it just was more violent. Clearly defined, I guess is what I should say, even though I thought they were doing ice hockey.
I get that. And I will give you that.
Yeah, I just think that they would have had an easier time doing that had they focused more on a couple guys. Like, there's a guy that they show me a bunch of times, some mustachio dude who at the end finishes in like 30th place. And he was not funny or endearing enough that I'm like, you didn't need to be here.
Josh Bridges. Yeah, he's somebody who like was really relevant earlier. So people who know the sport are like, oh, it's Josh Bridges, but he's like had his day.
Maybe that would have had more meaning to me. Instead, like I said, I named probably the 4 to 5 people that I think you probably should have focused on in this game, because Tia is, rising star. Matt Fraser is veteran who is like expected to win. Patrick Vellner is just like a charming underdog type guy. Sigmund's daughter, like, oh, that's kind of funny, her live long and prosper bit, and like, just a random competitor. You know what I mean? Give me a little bit of like top, middle, bottom level of the competition. And instead I felt like it gave me a lot. Like, this felt like it was longer than it was because, by the time we're already finishing parts of the CrossFit games, and I'm like, I don't know anybody yet. Yeah. Like I should be like an hour into this and already know so many of these competitors so well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Instead it was like, that's somebody's daughter. I don't know.
Yeah. I get that. I totally get that.
I literally did write down at one point, is this all one day? I was like, my God. Yeah, like they talk about, Tia and her coach is her fiance, and they're talking about her performance last year, and they just didn't really show it to me. Like, again, they so often teased me, Gab. They were like, they would give me a snippet of B-roll and then be like, and we're done. And I was like, yeah, God damn it.
Yeah, I get it. I feared that when I watched it. Like, oh, I get it because I know these people and I know what they're talking about. But oh, yeah.
Yeah. And they told me, I learned 49 minutes in that the CrossFit Games started in 2007, 2008. But I was like, that is the most I've been told about like the history of the sport so far. Yeah. Not that it needs to tell me that, but it just was telling me so little that I was relishing every time it told me something about the sport that I could understand besides like, who are they showing me finishing first right now? Yeah. What else do I have here? I did, they did a little bit again for the people from Iceland. I can't remember her name. I think it's Thorisdottir. She kind of looked like Jessica Chastain.
Yep, Annie Thorisdottir. Annie Thorisdottir.
Another one of the daughters is talking about being at her, she wanted to get into CrossFit and she went to her local gym, and who was her teacher but her, the other daughter. And I was like, oh, that's a cool aspect. You know what I mean? And it immediately made the two of them more interesting because they're rooting for each other, but they're also competing against each other. Yeah. So you know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, that's an interesting thing. I would have liked to have known that far earlier into this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just had a hard time giving me backstory. Like, is this these people's jobs? Like, is this what they do year round? And now I know for at least Thor's daughter, like, no, she also teaches CrossFit.
Yeah. Or at least she used to. She definitely doesn't anymore. Because now now these athletes are like, as the sport got bigger, athletes started to get sponsorships. So now, Annie Thorisdottir is a tier athlete. Fun fact. You remember my friend Kristen, of course, right? Mm-hmm. Kristen is engaged to the CEO of Tier. Tier sponsored Wadapalooza this year. Crazy. But Tier, TYR, is a huge sporting brand. And so they sponsor they sponsor Patrick Vellner, they sponsor Annie Thorisdottir. So she just gets paid to train and try to win these games. She's in all their advertisements, like stuff like that. Most of them now are essentially just full-time training mode. Most of them don't even train at like a traditional CrossFit gym. So some of them do, but a lot of the really elite ones have coaches, and lately they've been doing this like training camp thing where, let's say like Matt Frazier, who has since retired, he now runs Hard Work Pays Off, which is a Nike sponsored training camp. And he coaches like Katrin David's daughter, this up and comer named Mal O'Brien, who was in second place for the women last year. He trains Jason Hopper, who's another younger male athlete, and they all move to where he lives. And they all live on this compound and they train together 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
I never like hearing they all live on a compound. I'm like, nothing good happens at like people who live on compound. Not doing good against your cult argument with the compound, but
I know. But
I do appreciate all the information, all the backstory that you're giving me is something that I wish the documentary had given me.
I know, but that's the thing. Like that documentary doesn't exist, so I'm here with the goods. I'm trying to reel you in, because what I do think I'm looking for here, if I'm being honest with you, and this is not a therapy session, but I think I'm excited to see if the sport catches your interest rather than the documentary. I understand the documentary is not out of context. Like if you're out of the world of CrossFit, I can get where you'd be like, this didn't give me a lot of info. But because these documentaries really got me hooked on like the idea of what this sport is and how people compete in it, I hope that it just gives you like a new kind of excitement for the sport, because it is fun to watch on TV and stuff like that. But anyway,
I will say, and also it does go back to you talking about endorsements. I found myself curious to look up what is the prize for this, because if people are training year round for this, like, you know, is the prize like $10 and a pack of gum? Because I've seen like there are some, you know, sports as documentaries, one of which we may be talking about soon, dropping that hint right there, where there's not much of a prize, but it's really about like the competitorship and the pride amongst these people. But no, it's a pretty sizable prize for this. I think the top prize that I found as of like 2020 or something was $310,000.
Yeah.
And it's not, you don't just get a prize for first place, and you might know this better than me. They had a prize pool of like $2-point-something million or $3-point-something million. So you get a prize, I guess, if you're in like if you're a podium placer or a top 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the thing is, so I keep talking about Wadapalooza only because it just happened and I was there. But like Wadapalooza it used to be that if you won Wadapalooza, you were automatically qualified for the CrossFit Games. You sort of like pass all of the open and all the competitions and stuff like that. That is no longer the case, but you could go to Wadapalooza, and I think the winner won like $250,000 just for winning that weekend.
At Wadapalooza?
And yeah.
Goddamn.
I mean, the Dubai.
Can I still win without submitting a video?
No, you gotta submit a video at least now. But you could enter. Like that's the thing, you could enter. So if you train and get good enough, if you have some like untapped potential as an incredible, well-rounded athlete, and I know you don't, but if you did, you could just go.
I was nodding first. She's not just a dick there.
Yeah. He was indicating that could not be the case.
Yes.
We both knew it either way. But like the Dubai Fitness Challenge, which is one where all these athletes go to Dubai, which is not cheap. And like this year's, the first event at the Dubai Fitness Challenge was you had to, wearing a weighted vest, walk up all the flights of stairs of the Burj Khalifa.
Isn't that the tallest building in the world?
It is.
Or
and
like
they had
of?
to, yes, it is the tallest, and they had to go all the way up. You couldn't have water. You couldn't have like any like, you couldn't have your phone. You couldn't have headphones. You just had to walk up the stairs of the tallest building in the world.
And that son of a bitch, Ricky Gerard, was there with a helium vest riding the elevator.
There was no time cap either. It's not like after an hour, if you didn't make it, you were disqualified. There was no time cap. So if you wanted to, and you couldn't move on to day 2 if you didn't finish it. How fucking insane is that?
Nobody has died at the CrossFit Games, because I did say that at one point. We're watching, and I'm like, somebody's gonna die in this sport, like
honestly,
because it does look like that at times. And like, you know, they showed one person get like heat stroke and heat exhaustion. I'm like, somebody's heart is just gonna explode during one of these.
Honestly, because they don't quit. But the Dubai Fitness Challenge has the highest prize purse of all of the competitions, and like there's one event where the not just the overall winner, but this was a few years ago because Matt Frazier was competing, but the final event, the first place winner, not of the whole games, but of the final event, won $35,000 just for that one event. It's
I'd
real
say
money.
sign me up, but no, I still wouldn't do it.
It's just crazy. Like, it's real money. I mean, Corey and I are looking at a competition in June, the weekend of my birthday, where first place for the scaled division. I'm talking about first place for the division where it's like really watered down because you don't quite have the skill set or the strength. The first place prize is $750.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
That's
like,
very good.
holy shit. Like, we're just going to do this for fun on a weekend. And if we win, we have till June to train for it. And we know what the events are because it's not the CrossFit Games. They tell you in advance. Although I'll tell you this, we just did a competition last weekend. We came in third, by the way, our very first competition ever.
You each came in third separately?
Co-ed team. So we were on a team together.
Okay.
They gave us the workouts prior to the event. So we had practiced them ad nauseum. So we were really comfortable. And then at the end, the top 3 teams had to compete in a workout that we didn't know about. So they gave us 3 minutes to look over the workout, figure out how we were going to divide it up, and then do it. And then whichever team, there was like first, second, and third. But funny that you should mention the points thing, because frankly, I don't really get it either. We came in second. So obviously they called the top 3 teams to compete in this final workout. We were second place of the 3 teams in this final workout, but we came in third place overall. So somewhere along the lines, we lost points on something that we didn't quite make up for in the. I don't know how
you were
works,
using the
but we
hammer
came
to
in
hook
third.
the block. That's what you did.
That's what it was. Yep. But it's
That's
just
even
so
more.
fun. Like,
were you frustrated by that? Because I was shocked that like there wasn't more frustration. And I will say it seemed like a nice community amongst each other. They were very supportive of each other. The sportsmanship was wonderful. But I would have liked a little bit. Like, there are times where I'm like, okay, show me a little rivalry then here, because you should be fucking furious about that. Like, I was more upset for them than they were. They're like, I guess they were just hooking the thing and we were just cool with that. Like, there was the guy,
Brent Fikowski.
Yes, who's talking about he came in 4th in that event. And he said, I was the only one who, I wasn't doing that. And the 3 guys ahead of me were. Well, man, you should be making a big stink because you won that event by your logic.
Yeah. No, I know. I hear you. But I think it's such a long weekend and there are so many events that it's like, well, I fucked up this one. Like, Pat Vellner is famous for coming in last in the first event and then slowly digging himself out of a hole and ending up on the podium. There's just so many events and so many things that you have to do. But I agree with you. And honestly, in recent years, things have gotten heated. Like, there's been a couple of events where on the field, guys are screaming at other people's judges because, hey, my judge said I wasn't allowed to do that and he's doing it. Like, it's gotten a little bit more like spot on.
Is it roid rage, Gab?
I maybe it could be. I don't know. I don't think so. I'd like to not think so, but who knows?
It's that son of a bitch, Ricky Gerard.
Yeah. Watching him, oh my God. Like, he walked into the restaurant we were sitting in and I was like, oh God, he's gross. But I know people that are like, I love him and I can't wait to see him make a comeback.
I understood every other Aussie, every other person from Iceland, but I could not get a word that Ricky Gerard said. I was like,
he's a fucking marble mouth. He's like, no.
He felt like, how half of Stallone's face is paralyzed? Like, that's why you can't understand him. I was like, I can't get a word of this man. He was like,
yes. I couldn't look at my father in the face. Yeah, I know. He sucks. Yeah. So, what do you think? Do you have any other opinions?
I think I got all my opinions out there. So is it fact time?
Let's get to the facts.
I want the truth!
Face the facts, ducks.
Facts have no place with an organized religion.
Okay, Gab, I know you're bringing some facts here because my facts are incredibly light today because there is no box office for this. There is no budget. I'm sure there was a budget, but they didn't tell me. So first, let's get to some reviews because I do have those.
Okay.
I have one professional review from Kimberly Myers from the LA Times. This documentary is pure entertainment, starting from the moments the thundering booms of its soundtrack. Thundering booms. I will confirm that there were thundering booms. Signified that the games are about to begin. Then I have some IMDb reviews because it was light on information. So, first, 2 out of 10, 2017's Fittest on Earth documentary was great. It was focused on the events, and we all received a lot of insight on what was going on in the athlete's mind during the events. Now this year's doc was about everything else but the actual events, and it was terrible. I do not know why they decided to focus on everything but the events and the athletes. Very disappointed. Now, having watched this movie, I feel like the whole time I've been saying, all they focused on was the events. I didn't know anybody. And she's like, they didn't do anything like they did last year. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Next one. This person gave it a 5 out of 10, which would sound, the out of 10 system makes it sound worse than like just out of 4 stars. And you're like 2 stars.
Yeah.
Every few seconds, the all caps loud music came on and had to adjust volume. Barely hear the talking, so add subtitles and barely helps. These movies are always annoying to watch. Turn volume up to hear them blabbing. Then I'm in the kitchen drinking water. Extremely loud music comes on. Run over to turn volume down so the neighbors don't wake up. So annoying. Also,
are we really going to trust the opinion of someone who admits to getting up and leaving in the middle of the movie?
Gaff, their opinion is just as important as anyone else's. Also, this is all I had here. Also, the description indicated they would test them for steroids, but didn't. I know these girls and dudes are taking drugs. Not all, but some are. You can't have a beautiful female like Catherine Davidsdottir have big blocky abs and is natural, but I do still love Catherine Davidsdottir and want to snuggle with her and make babies with her?
Oh
of course.
Is
she taking steroids? Maybe. Want to watch movies like this, but they really need to stop fluctuating the audio so much. Stop with the extremely loud music. Turn their mics up so I can hear them.
Okay, I'm done with reviews.
Can we talk can we talk about that review took me on so much more of a journey the documentary did. At the beginning, I was like, yeah, the music was loud. By the end, I was like, what has happened here?
That's amazing. I will say this in defense of Catherine Davidsdottir and all the women and maybe the men, I guess, I don't know, but as somebody who is a professional in this field, not necessarily CrossFit, but fitness in general, people really do look like that. And I know to the average person, it's like, holy shit, that person has to be on steroids. But there are so many factors at play, like genetics.
They do also make a fair explanation of saying this is these people's entire lives.
Yes, literally. I mean, listen, I don't want to like blow any egos up or anything like that, but like, I know Corey doesn't take steroids. I'm positive. And he looks like that.
Yeah, and I've been dealing Corey steroids for several years now.
Damn it, you're the one giving them to him. God damn it. But I know he's been very consistently working out since he's 15 years old. I know like strength and musculature like that run in his family. I know that he like eats very, very well. He doesn't eat a single thing that is unhealthy. And like, that's just that's what happens. I know women,
but I'm also just picturing you, Gab, being like Barry Bonds. I never saw him do those runs.
I know.
Not that I'm implicating Corey in any way. I just had to make that comment now.
I know. And to anybody who has no idea like how much time we spend together in our relationship, like I know it would sound like that. But we are together very often, and I have never seen him inject himself with anything. But I know women that have had babies who have 6-pack abs like that. Like, I know them. I work with them. I see them all the time. Yes. So I know it's possible and I know it's difficult. And I don't know that I have the genetics. I mean, look at our family. Like, look at our family. I don't know that I have the genetics to ever get there, no matter how hard I work. But I know people that don't work hard at all and look like that. It's just there are people, and those people, of course, are the ones who get into the, the top 40 in the world. So for us to look and be like, well, if I worked my ass off even that hard, I still wouldn't look like that. So they must be on steroids. I get it. But there are people out there who are just walking around like that.
And to the same extent, as the documentary does say, you can be on steroids and not look like that easily too. Like a Lance Armstrong who was just like built for endurance and was still doing plenty of roids. Or you can be built like that and happen to not be on steroids.
Well, and not
you
for
have
nothing,
right to
dude.
be suspicious, but yeah.
Sure. But I no longer work there. So I feel like I can like really spit some truth here. But at my old job, which was a very high end, small group strength and conditioning facility, which I will not give the name of, although anybody who could look at my Instagram would know. We had a lot of very high end clientele because it was a very pricey place to work. Or place to train. And some of our regular ass clients, I'm not talking about the Peloton instructors. I'm not talking about the professional jujitsu people. I'm talking about like the average IT guy who happens to have a lot of money and trains here is on steroids. and they just openly talk about it, and they still can't do shit. Like, still are weak, still are pathetic, still, and they might look to the naked eye like they have some kind of ability. They present as capable, as we say.
That's why they're doing the steroids. They're not doing it because they want to be the strongest. They want to look the strongest.
Right. But what I'm saying is if just because you're on steroids, and I'm not suggesting that you should take them, but I'm just saying, like, it's the steroids don't make you a good athlete. You know what I mean? Like,
but could you give me some, Gab? Do you have a hookup?
I do have a hookup because I know all these people that are fucking taking them.
Put me in touch with that IT guy.
I will. He's the saddest, most pathetic motherfucker I've ever met in my life. And you know what? I'd say that to his face.
Okay. Anyway. I just have a couple more facts.
Let's go, because I got plenty.
IMDb gave this a 7.1 out of 10.
Okay.
The tomato meter did not have a professional score because there was only one review, but it got an average rating of 6.6 out of 10, 38 fresh reviews, and 16 rotten among the fans. Audience score overall was 85%. Oh, wait. Okay. That was still from last week, the 6.6, 38 fresh, 16 rotten. Because I was like, I don't want to erase last week because I don't have any notes for this. So I wanted to keep my format. So no, there was no tomato meter at all for the professional. The audience score was 85% with an average score of 4.1 out of 5 for 5 total audience reviews. All right.
I'll take that.
All right. One other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Fraser continued to win after the 2017 games at the 2018, 2019, and 2020 games. Tia-Clair Toomey, after the 2017 win, won at the 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 games.
She's the GOAT.
Important note, Patrick Vellner, who got cheated by that son of a bitch, Ricky Gerard, and he would have finished third and gotten onto the podium, but they said he might never get that moment. Be pleased, people, because he finishes second the next year. So good for Patrick Vellner.
He did. He's my fave. I love Patty Velney.
It's all you now, Gab.
All right.
I'm handing over the keys of this fact trip to you.
So my favorite quote from this whole documentary is when they're describing the CrossFit athletes that make it to the games, and they say what they have that the rest of us don't is, quote, grit, willingness to suffer and endure pain. And I just think that is so fucking dope. Like, yeah, because that's what it is. It's your ability to do this grunt work and this stuff that people are like, oh, I don't want to do that. I
wrote down somewhere in here, it's just masochism. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to be a little bit masochistic.
I don't know if it's this documentary or the one before where they're talking about when Cara Webb gets a heat stroke in when she's doing Murph, which is a hero workout. And they say,
unless
like,
she gets heat strokes a lot.
No. They're just reflecting back on it. It's in both documentaries, but they're like reflecting back. And they say somebody like you or I would never get heat stroke because the moment it got that uncomfortable, we would slow down. But she pushed herself so hard because she wanted to win this event that she wound up passing out at the finish line, going unconscious, dumping that whole thing of water on her head, and just totally blacking out because she pushed herself that hard. And I don't condone that necessarily. Yeah. But I mean, I get it. Like when it's competition day and you've been training all year for this, like, hell yeah, I don't care how hot it is. I'm pushing.
I'm ultra competitive, but like the things I'm ultra competitive at are, I'm never going to be like, to the extent that I will hurt myself for it. Like I'm ultra competitive at like Seen It, the movie trivia game, but I'm not going to be like, Dylan, if you shout out one more answer, your vocal cords are going to be done for the rest of your life. I'm not going to be like, Brendan Fraser.
I've seen you flip a board game once or twice.
I don't remember flipping the board game, but I probably had the right to do it.
Oh my God, you flipped the board game quite a few times. We don't have to go on this, but you definitely flipped. I remember it happening 3 times. Okay, in our childhood.
Flipping board games?
Yes, like literally, like underhanded pop, flipping it over. One time it was Sorry, which was we had a hot streak with Sorry for a while.
Sorry about it.
Second time was the Game of Life, but we made up our own rules, and like Zach was the Life Mafia, and it just got out of hand. And I think
can you not see why this sounds ridiculous?
You had every right to flip. Zach was really going on a tear. He was the Mafia, and we both owed him a lot of money, but he was coming after you, and you flipped the game and left.
He either flipped the board or he took my thumbs, Gab.
The last time was when the whole family was playing Catchphrase.
No, Catchphrase is the most aggravating game for people who have never played Catchphrase. The whole point is like get somebody to guess the word that's on the screen without saying the exact word, and there's a timer, and the whole time the timer goes from doop 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 to doop 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 doop, and you are like, they have, I don't know if you've seen a recent Catchphrase. they have turned it into a frisbee with a heavy center that has batteries in it. So they are implying that you should just be, the whole thing used to be like, you end up throwing this thing and, you know, you all amongst yourselves before the game were like, don't throw it. Let's remain civilized and just pass it to each other. But when it comes down to it, you're like, he was holding it when the timer went off. And now the fact that they have made this thing into a fucking frisbee, I'm like, you are telling us to throw it. I am going to accidentally kill my 92-year-old grandma because I'm going to catch. Like,
yeah. And honestly, the thing is, like, in our family, it wasn't just about winning. It was also about being the funniest. And so you got motherfuckers that are trying to like outdo each other. And it was just, I understand why you flipped it. But you had no right to flip the sorry board.
No regrets. Sorry, not sorry.
All right. Well, anyway, you are very competitive, and so am I. I mean, obviously. But anyway, so my facts. So I also went on to talk about Matt Frazier and Tia-Clair Toomey, who are the two GOATs. Tia-Clair Toomey, I wanted her to go for a 7th win, but she will not because she is currently pregnant with Shane Orr's baby. So she will not be competing this year. And actually today, Cara Webb, now married Cara Saunders, also announced that she will not be competing, which I thought was crazy because I really wanted to see Cara do well with Tia out of the field, because Tia is now very similar to how Matt Frazier was in that documentary, where people are just like, it's a fight for second place. Yeah. So it's going to be a really interesting year. Annie Thorisdottir is competing solo as an individual.
I wish they had told me how old some of these people are, because I'm wondering, like, man, are they just like, it's shocking that they're still doing it at this age by this point? Or is it like, no, he's 27? Like,
I mean, they're all roughly like our age, a little bit older. So they're actually, and 2017 was the first year that they introduced this, but now there's a masters division, which is for the quote unquote older athletes. And the masters division, you have to be between 35 and 39.
Is there a division above that? Like, are there 60-year-olds that they've got competing against each other?
Yes, there truly is, but that's not considered elite. So if you want to be elite,
but if you want to see somebody possibly die doing CrossFit, you get that 65-year-old dude out there.
It's insane what these fucking old people can do, dude. Like, you watch it and you're like, I can't do that. Never mind someone. And, you know, a lot of these people, like now, especially like Mal O'Brien, who I mentioned earlier, who came in second to Tia last year, is like 20 or 21, maybe not even. I think she might be 20. And Mal has been doing CrossFit since she's like 11. You know what I mean? So it's like, I understand, like, these kids grew up doing it, but like, you look at someone who's 60 and you're like, this sport hasn't been around that long. He's only been doing this for like 10, 11 years. So he started when he was 50. And like now it's so impressive. It really is accessible to all people. Like, I've only been doing it for 6 months, and you know me, like, I have been in fitness for 8 years, but I was never an athlete as a kid.
No, she wasn't. I feel like you wanted me to confirm that. You were not.
Yeah, I did. I was not. My mom pulled me out of cheerleading because she said I was embarrassing myself. And
Jesus.
And we played baseball together.
That was
until
the day
we were
that she tore the Ricky Gerard poster down from her wall.
I mean, where were we, like 9 or 10 when we stopped playing baseball? It was probably when I moved out to Ronkonkoma. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So that was the extent of my athletic prowess as a child growing up. You know, I didn't do anything in middle school or high school. So this is really like, as an adult, I'm starting to like, I just learned how to do a handstand. I just learned how to do double unders, which is when the jump rope goes under your feet twice every time. But you know, it's accessible. Anyway, we talked about Ricky Gerard. We talked about Patrick Vellner. 2017 was the debut of the Masters division. And that year, the CrossFit Open was won by Matt Frazier. Accidentally, he didn't want to win. And Sarah Sigmundsdottir, live long and prosper. And then I've got some facts about CrossFit. So to compete in the CrossFit Games, athletes compete in the CrossFit Open, which takes place over 5 weeks in February and March, with one workout being released each week. Top athletes from the open regions move on to 8 regionals, and all the top men and women who qualified for the regionals are required to submit videos of their performance from the open. So again, you have to have proof that you did it as well as you did.
And I just want to remind you people, the documentary does not tell you any of what Gab is telling you.
I know. Regionals take place between May and June, with 40 athletes competing in each region. Actually, this year, there's been a lot of drama because people are just moving to their training camps, right? So like, there are all these different training camps, and people from all over the world like move to Tennessee, has a lot of them. Florida has a few, Vermont, there's California. And there are only so many spots in every region. So some athletes are actually going to the West Coast, even though their training camp is on the East Coast, because they just are afraid they're not going to make it on the East Coast because there's so much competition. So it's very interesting to see how people are like dealing with this regional thing because it's relatively new. The top 5 athletes from each region go on to the games, resulting in 40 men and 40 women competing. With few exceptions, the athletes do not know what events will be or what to expect. As a sport, CrossFit revolves around training for the unknown and unknowable so that athletes are prepared for absolutely any event at the games.
Which does make it feel more like it's going to be trivia, the unknown and the unknowable, but I do see what they mean as well.
Yeah. But it's
like,
really
it would be
cool.
great if Matt Fraser's carrying a Bay of Hail and they were like, and what is the Pythagorean theorem? Like, oh shit.
God damn it. There have been so many interesting things though. Like there was this joke last year. So I just explained to you what a double under is, right? Mm-hmm. There was an event at the games last year called double under crossover, or that included double under crossovers. You know, when somebody's jump roping and they can like make an infinity with their hands and go like,
you cross your hands while jump roping.
Yeah, thank you. I'm over here like people can see me. So you had to do a double under where it goes underneath your feet 2 times and also cross over. And nobody could do it. Literally one athlete, Nick Matthew, what's up? I met him at a Whole Foods in Miami. Nick Matthew was the only one who was able to do it. And so he won that event because other athletes are like, I've never even attempted this before. But then now, anytime you walk into a CrossFit gym after that, people are doing double under crossovers because they're like, holy shit, this is in the games. But no one had ever done that before. So it's like really funny.
Every motherfucker who does CrossFit is like doing handstands, walking, and using they got the monkey feet going where they're holding their their latte with their foot, easily drinking out of it. I don't know. I was like, what? It felt like, and again, I just had to accept that as part of the sport. But I was like, what? Why are we doing handstand push-ups? What does this prove? But I was like, it's the sport.
It's the sport. CrossFit's definition of fitness, and I think this will give you some insight, is work capacity, meaning what you're capable of, across broad time and modal domains. So what you can do in a short period of time in all these different types and modalities, and a long periods of time in these types of modalities. And to go back to what I was saying before, there have been events at the CrossFit Games where they're told they have to run from point A to point B, right? And they run, and when they get to point B, they go, okay, now turn around and go back to point A. And they're like, God damn it, I thought I was done, And then the people are running and they start to see people going the other way and they start to realize that they're only halfway there. Like, it's psychological as well. There are events like the first time, I think it was 2019, they introduced the pegboard, which is where you have to climb a wall, only very Ninja Warrior, where you're using these pegs to get up and you can't use your feet. You have to like pull the peg out, put the peg in, pull the peg out, put the peg in. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And nobody, like no CrossFit gyms had a pegboard, but now every gym in America has a pegboard. It's so cool how like they were just trying to see how's your upper body strength, how's your coordination. Like just because you've never practiced this doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to do it. It's so exciting. CrossFit is the largest fitness brand in the world. And then CrossFit benchmark workouts are mostly given women's names. So in this documentary, we saw them do Amanda, right? According to CrossFit founder Greg Glassman, quote, I thought that anything that left you flat on your back, looking up at the sky, asking what just happened to me, deserved a female's name, which I think is interesting.
Okay.
And lastly, I have the points table, which I can explain to you as of the 2020 CrossFit Games. So when you come in first place, you get 100 points. Second place is 96, then 92, then 88, then 84, all the way down to 30th place gets 1 point.
See, Gab, if they had explained that to me before, that the difference between first and second place is 4 points, you just said, right? Second place is 96.
Yep.
I would have known that she still could win by coming in second and would have known, oh, Tia won.
Yeah.
I had no fucking clue what was happening there for a second. I was like, did Tia just lose? So it just shows that also, I don't think they had a clue either, because her fiance, who was her coach, was like, I went to the back of the stands. I thought it was all over. I thought my fiance was a loser. Like, like there were times where I was like, there does not seem like there's a lot of love here. But
yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, that's the point system as of 2020. So I'm not positive what it was in 2017, but it's always been something similar to that.
Yeah, I think it was whatever Dave Castro wanted. That guy seemed
pretty much.
I don't like the cut of that guy's jib.
Yeah, he's been fired, and there's a lot of like, so Adrian Bosmer, who was in that documentary as well, is now the programmer for the CrossFit Games. And I don't really know what happened to Dave Castro. They don't really talk about it a lot, but he was fired. And it's interesting. There's a lot of debate now too. So like I mentioned, Matt Frazier owns Hard Work Pays Off, which is a training camp. They are programming Hard Work Pays Off, which is a conglomerate. There are a bunch of trainers that work with Matt. They are programming some competitions, nothing crazy, nothing huge, but like it begs the question, like, should Hard Work Pays Off be allowed to program for a regional event or for the games? Does that give his athletes an unfair advantage, even if he doesn't put any of what they're doing in their training?
It gives his athletes it's like that whole conversation, like, sure, people are doing steroids, but not me.
Yeah. No, but it is unfair, right?
Unfair.
It's like it has to come from corporate. It's just so interesting, like, because it's the Wild West, right? And the sport is growing and changing and
unrefined still.
Yes. Yeah. But the idea that I'm going to go into my CrossFit gym and do a workout and, Friday Night Lights is coming up this Friday. It's the first weekend of the Open and people are all going to be doing the same workout, 23.1. And it's so cool to be able to be involved in this sport. And then, come August, I'm actually going to the CrossFit Games to watch, not to participate. But like I'll be in Madison, Wisconsin, watching the games live and seeing these people and it's just very exciting to think that I could participate and also spectate.
I can't imagine there will be much else going on in Madison, Wisconsin, so I hope you have a good time at the games.
Yeah, our Airbnb was dirt cheap, so.
But enough about the wonders of Wisconsin and the CrossFit Games, Gab. Can we get to some mail real quick?
Let's talk about the mail.
Mail time! When you control the mail, you control information.
Mom asked me to ask you if there's any mail for us here by mistake.
What?
Alrighty, so we're going to start with some comments on our last episode, which was True Lies with Nando. So first we have a comment from Scarlowy1, who I can again tell you is from the Jump on the Batwagon podcast.
Wow, they're really jumping off the Batwagon and coming over to us, huh?
Oh my God, I should cut that.
Oh my God, I didn't mean it. I don't know what any of this means.
No, as someone who makes bad jokes, that was terrible.
And I was so proud of myself. And as it came out, I thought, this is going to sound like I've been waiting all week to say this, but that really just like right off the dome.
No, you came up with that right now? Okay, Scarlowy1. Getting Nando on this little podcast is insane, but sadly, I have to watch the movie before I can listen.
It's insane?
Well, he is definitely, a bit big for our britches. We've got like 50-something subscribers. He's got like 200 and something thousand.
Well, damn. He was dope, too.
He could not have been nicer, and I feel bad because I think it was a day where the both of us were just like fucking exhausted.
Oh, yeah, that was a bad day. If we didn't have him, I would have been like, yo, we need to reschedule. Like,
yes,
unwell.
If not for him, we both would have like been sleepwalking through that recording.
Yeah. Yeah, damn. Good for us.
Yeah, and I had like a couple people outside of the podcast being like, how did you do it? And I was like, I just messaged a lot of people and a couple people responded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at you, PR Central.
Yeah, just wait. Eventually I will get the biggest names in Hollywood on this podcast.
Nicolas Cage, baby, bring him on.
You know what? That we'll put that at the top of our dream list.
I mean, Nicolas Cage says yes to everything, so you never know.
Did you hear they asked him about if he'd be in the MCU, and he said, "Why would I be in the MCU? I'm Nick Cage."
No.
I think that was his response, and I'm like, "This is what you say no to?
This is where you draw the line?" That's
he was
crazy.
like, "Listen, I'm out of bankruptcy court. It's fine. I don't need to be in the MCU."
He filed for bankruptcy?
I have no idea. I just know that he's a guy who has notoriously spent money on foolish things.
Interesting. I need to do some more research. My friend Scott watched Vampire's Kiss recently because he's reading a book about Nicolas Cage.
Mhm.
And I guess he's like watching all of his work. I don't know. But A, he loved it. B, he'd like to come on the podcast as a guest, which I suppose I don't need to talk to you about as we record. And C, maybe I should read this book.
There's too many Nicolas Cage movies to watch them all because a lot of them are trash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of those trash ones is my new favorite movie.
I was going to say not delightful trash either, just like boring trash.
Right.
Okay. And obviously Scott is welcome to be a guest on this podcast, but again, something to further discuss outside of the mail section.
Correct.
Let's get to the next comment from Boss Biggest. Great episode. I always love me a good Amy movie. Arnie movie. It was short for Arnold
Arnie.
Schwarzenegger. That
Yes.
R and N became an M very easily.
That
I
it
was like,
happens.
I knew something was fucked up there, but I was like, what is going on? You know what? Let's try that again. I'm not going to cut it out. I just want to start over.
Sure.
Forgive me, Boss Biggest. Great episode. I always love me a good Arnie movie and love that you got Nando on as a guest. Gab, I'll Venmo you a 5 cents and then I'll want that nickel back. We can't afford to lose listeners, Boss Biggest, but if we could over that joke.
We would. That is arguably worse than my joke about falling off the bandwagon.
It's like a competition today.
Wait, did we make a reference to Nickelback?
No, that was all him.
Oh, so that was he really just wanted to reference Nickelback.
I think so.
All right, that's cool. You do you, I guess.
Alrighty. Now we got a comment from Scotty Cameron. These are all in True Lies. I don't know if I need to preface that again. I love that Vampire's Kiss is being recommended to the listeners who haven't seen it. What a movie. Pedro, go watch Vampire's Kiss. You have not lived until you see Vampire's Kiss.
True.
I still use this quote from Dylan. I still hear this quote from Dylan ringing in my head anytime Vampire's Kiss is mentioned. You know, Scotty, I think we both thought you were a jackass for picking this, and it turns out we were the jackasses.
That is, I think, the quote of this podcast.
That, and I'll send you my Venmo.
Yeah.
We're still talking about that movie. Yes, I agree that Temple of Doom is the weakest in the original Indiana Jones trilogy, but it is still leaps and bounds better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Of course it is.
Kingdom of the Krusty.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Our guy from the Krusty Krab. Okay. I have to say, my favorite Indiana Jones film is The Last Crusade. Wraps up the trilogy nicely, and it has some great humor. I'm curious to see how Dial of Destiny turns out. Yes, I knew Steven Seagal was a deputized agent of the law. Hassan Piker has reacted to episodes of Steven Seagal's reality show. Fitting how most of the stuff I've seen of the show is Seagal sitting in a police car, given that in his movies, he spends most of the runtime sitting down and having his body double do the walking for him. He even shot a fight scene in the movie Out for a Kill sitting down. That's enough Steven Seagal talk. What was it? Back to the bargain bin dumpster for him?
Yeah, the bargain bin. I don't remember. The straight to video bargain bin.
Oh, you're so close. We're definitely right there. We're on the precipice.
Yeah, almost.
Scotty, you'll remind us. Scotty's my information guy. He's
Honestly.
like what's the guy from the Joe Rogan podcast? He's like, pull that up. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's Scotty, except he's like a week behind because we don't have him actually here. Okay, and there was one more comment from Scotty Cameron. See, he knew that I just needed something from him, and he just sent this right now, I'm sure.
Amazing.
Mission Impossible Fallout was the film with the bathroom fight where Tom Cruise and Superman take out an arms dealer, so Cruise could impersonate the arms dealer with the trademark Mission Impossible masks. I have all 6 Mission Impossible movies on DVD.
Good for you, Scotty. Happy for you.
I have so many DVDs, I've realized now that I had to, Zach was over the other night, and I just gave him a bunch because I was like, I have 17 movies that I accidentally have bought twice.
That is so crazy. First of all, I do remember being kids and going to the mall and going to the movie store and you always buying DVDs. That is who you are, and that is who you have been since the dawn of DVDs. But
I do buy my Blu-rays here and now and 4K videos here and now.
I just don't get it because I don't have a DVD player. I don't have a DVD. I don't have anywhere to play a DVD if I were to get a DVD. Everything, I have a Roku, and whenever we do this podcast and I have to watch a movie, I either stream it or rent it or whatever, but it's all on Roku. And I have DVDs at my parents' house, of course, from when I was in high school and whatever, but buying a DVD now feels so outdated and irrelevant.
In many ways, you're right. I will say, just as an aside, I think I'd recently seen that the only form of music that was profitable right now, besides streaming, is vinyl. So there is an aspect of what's old is new again. But I will also say that I think that I'll always have some support for physical media because it easily happens where all of a sudden the streaming service gets rid of a thing. HBO Max is a perfect example where they were dumping stuff left and right. They were talking about getting rid of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Are they the most important shows of all time? No. But as many people who apparently listen to Jump on the Bandwagon who are listening to this will know, it's a great show. When they were talking about getting rid of HBO Max, I was like, thank God I already owned it on DVD. because you know what? It's one of those things that it just becomes very hard to find. And yes, it's very convenient right now that on the Roku you can watch whatever you want to watch. But you know what? These streaming services, I can't trust them.
That's fair. That's fair.
But no, do you need to own hundreds of DVDs? Absolutely not.
Yeah. You definitely take it to an extreme, but I understand the reasoning behind it.
I will say there are, like, I think I take it to the extreme, but then there's a subreddit for DVD collection. And I have seen pictures on there where it is literally just rooms filled with thousands of movies. And I'm like, every movie I have seen and I enjoy. If you have thousands of movies, it's like some of these you're just like, buy. Like, not to sound like NSYNC over here, but it's just consistently just buying for no reason. So that I don't understand.
You know that I'm like still a member of the NSYNC fan club, right? Like, do you know that?
No, why would I know that? I don't even know that the NSYNC fan club still exists.
It does. And what's funny is it's growing with us. So like, whereas you used to, like when I was in high school, it was like, buy this cool denim jacket, buy this whatever. Now it's like, buy this cornhole set, buy this grill set with an NSYNC spatula and grill scraper, buy this. It's like, oh my God, we're old and this fan base is not getting any younger and I'm still a part of it.
I was going to say, eventually it's going to be like, buy this patented NSYNC hemorrhoid cushion. Like,
yes, honestly. And it's like, every year on Spotify, I'm in the top 0.001% of NSYNC listeners.
Oh my God.
Like, I know they only have 3 albums, but I love them so much. And I remember growing up, you were always more of a Backstreet Boys fan, or at least your like mom was,
I was, I gotta say, did I really care about either one that much? No. But you know what? When I hear it now, I'm like, there was definitely just like, being a kid, you're like, boy bands are stupid. And I'm like, no, I get it. I get why this was good at the time. You know what I mean?
It was great. It was great. Yeah. I remember being at the Burger King drive-thru with you and your mom, I think, listening to an NSYNC song that none of us knew the lyrics to. And I want to say it was not Bye Bye Bye.
That was the only one I was going to come up with off the top of my head.
No, it was.
It's
but
NSYNC.
It was definitely.
It's not Backstreet Boys.
No, it was NSYNC, and it was definitely maybe it was even "Sexy Back" by Justin Timberlake when he went solo.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I'm gonna think about it, but maybe it was "It's Gonna Be Me." But there was definitely, I think it was "It's Gonna Be Me." I don't know. Anyway,
where was this going though?
Yeah, I don't know. Just weird childhood memories of like loving NSYNC and everybody getting the lyrics wrong.
I feel like you just took me on a journey off a cliff. There's no ending to this story.
There is no. Well, there would have been an ending if you were like, oh yeah, I remember that too.
That wouldn't have been an ending. That's just a shared journey to nowhere.
Well, whatever. Cut this out then, I guess, if you really care that much.
No, the listeners know I don't cut things out by this point. I'm only cutting it out if you say something atrocious.
I've never said something atrocious in my life.
What I really want to do now is just put a bleep over what you just said. Like, that would be so much funnier. I'm still not going to do it, though.
Right, yeah. Too much work, but it would be funny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now that we're done with the comments, should we get to some email?
Please.
So, we got one from Scotty Cameron for True Lies.
I'm shocked.
Hey, Dylan and Gab. Great show as always. Nando was a great guest, and it has made me now want to start watching Nando V movies. I would recommend. I've seen his content in my recommended feed for quite some time, but have never actually taken the time to watch it. Now I'm going to start watching it. Just saying, Nando's going to be so grateful he came on here. We are getting him ones and ones of viewers. True Lies is a film I haven't seen in a while. I saw it on TV on the Grit Network. What the hell is the Grit Network?
Scotty Cameron always talks about these weird TV networks I have never heard of in my life.
Well, I think he had brought up Cartoon Network last time. Like that, I know. I've never heard of the Grit Network. Is that like a regional thing?
I have no idea. It must be.
Which mostly plays reruns of Walker, Texas Ranger on weekends. It plays action flicks on weekends as well. True Lies came on right after another Arnie movie. I was ready for the Arnie this time.
Oh, good job.
Another Arnie movie, Red Heat. Sometimes I get events from the films mixed up and think Jim Belushi was in True Lies. I could see Jim Belushi being the Tom Arnold guy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I remember liking True Lies more than Red Heat because the action was cooler and the plot was more interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny that Nando compares True Lies to modern superhero movies, given that James Cameron was pegged to direct Spider-Man in the 90s after True Lies. So maybe that film is what resulted in Cameron being selected for Spider-Man, but his Spider-Man never saw the light of day. I absolutely agree with the point that James Cameron is the filmmaker Michael Bay wishes he was. In fact, that's a point my brother and I have made about them when discussing filmmakers, and we add that Steven Spielberg is the filmmaker Roland Emmerich wishes he was. Yes, in general, I think Cameron's early films are great, particularly his Terminator films and Aliens. I think his more recent films are just okay. Avatar is very overrated. I don't if theaters would have swayed me any. I don't know if seeing it in theaters would have swayed me any, I think is what he means.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't know if you and I have talked about this before. Avatar 1 in theaters was amazing. I still haven't seen Avatar 2. I feel like I'm like the last person who hasn't yet. But
You're
Avatar
not the last
1 was
person.
amazing. Well, the movie's made $2 billion.
I didn't see Avatar 1 or 2.
You never saw Avatar 1?
No, because, there was something like very deeply contrarian in me when Avatar was coming out. And like, remember all those talks about people that were like committing suicide after watching Avatar? And I was a senior in high school. You don't remember that?
Fuck no.
Oh my God. I thought it was like national news, Dylan. Look it up. People were literally like,
This could not be true.
I swear to Christ, it is true. They were talking about how and I'm paraphrasing here, but like the world of Avatar was so beautiful and our world couldn't match up to it, so they just ended it all immediately after seeing the movie. Threw away their popcorn, got to the parking lot, ended it all. Tell me I'm wrong.
I found one article from 2014 that's titled "Avatar Driving Us to Suicide." Say fan.
Yes.
I don't believe anybody actually was actually hurt themselves because of the movie Avatar, though.
But I remember, I mean, not, listen, whatever. But like I feel like it was a really big deal.
North American fan site Avatar Forums has received 2,000 posts under a thread entitled "Ways to Cope with the Depression of the Dream of Pandora Being Intangible."
See?
The movie was so beautiful and it showed something we don't have here on Earth. I think people saw we could be living in a completely different world, and that caused them to be depressed. So I think people were depressed by Avatar, how beautiful it was. But no one, I don't think, killed themselves.
Wow. I specifically remember like the world's population being significantly decreased thanks to Avatar.
Oh my God. James Cameron was like trying to thin down the population.
Seriously, somebody please chime in and tell me they also remember this.
I was like, what are you talking about when you brought that up?
What? Keep going. I'm going to text Scott because Scott will remember.
Okay. And I'm going to keep talking about Scotty.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
Scotty, I will just say I do think in the theaters it was quite the experience. Then again, I was 11 at the time it was in theaters, and at age 11, I thought any movie with explosions was great. To be fair, I was like 17, so I probably felt about the same way. So 24-year-old me would have had to see this in theaters to know if it makes a real difference. Even then, I think I'd appreciate the visuals in Avatar more, but still think its story is just Dances with Wolves with blue people. To be fair, having seen Dances with Wolves, I think it could be improved by some blue people. It's a bit of a dull movie. Not a bad movie, but a bit dull. So I stand by Aliens, T2, and all of Cameron's early films except Piranha 2 are leaps and bounds better than his recent. I hope my long-distant, wealthier relative doesn't mind my comments about his movies. Oh my God, I just made the connection. I was like, Scotty Cameron. We have all the relatives of famous Hollywood personalities here with Vitz and Scotty.
Yeah.
Lastly, I'm just going to clear some things up for my comment on the Mummy episode. First, here are a few images of the character Flint from G.I. Joe comics, then an image of Flint from the movies compared to Sergeant Stone, Brendan Fraser. I can't believe I just said it that way. Notice how the comic book Flint has a black beret that has the United States Special Forces logo on it most of the time, whereas the movie has no beret whatsoever, let alone a Special Forces. Meanwhile, Fraser's Sergeant Stone has a black beret with the G.I. Joe logo on it. Last thing here is the music video for Godsmack's I Stand Alone, which was in the soundtrack for the Scorpion King. Godsmack is a heavy metal band that has a similar sound to bands such as Linkin Park and System of a Down. I'm a bit of a metalhead, and Godsmack is a band that I like. Sincerely, Scotty. And I feel bad to tell you that, Scotty, only one of the pictures came through. So we are looking at Sergeant Stone from G.I. Joe comics, but we did not get the rest. I apologize.
All right. Well, luckily, the only person here who seems to be interested in talking about G.I. Joe is Scotty. So
you know what? You say that. Scotty's educating us over here.
What's
the name of the Joe Rogan guy? He's always going, pull that up. God damn it. I know this we weren't recording.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, I suppose it's time to get back to the Redeemed and the Dominant. And oh, wait, no, I'm skipping over a full email here. Oh, my goodness.
Damn it, Dylan.
I forgot about Vitz. I'm so sorry, Vitz.
Jesus Christ, Dylan. We've got like 3 people on here.
Are the other two us?
Yeah.
Okay, Vitz. True Lies. 100% movie to watch before you die. I don't think I need to explain why. It just is. But where would be the fun in that? I honestly forgot that this was a James Cameron movie because it never really reads as one. But since his next big blockbuster after this was Titanic, pretty sure the money he made for True Lies just went straight into that. The true signs of using as much practical special effects reigns true as for most of his movies. And the CGI special effects that were there was nothing truly groundbreaking, like in Terminator 2 and The Abyss. However, any that were so seamless, it seemed fully practical and realistic. Looking at you, Mummy. One of my top Schwarzenegger movies behind Terminator 2 and Predator. My top Jamie Lee Curtis movie ahead of A Fish Called Wanda and Freaky Friday. It is great to see Tia-clair be a villain, with her previous role being Cassandra in Wayne's World, Paxton being ever so charmingly slimy, and another great role to me behind Aliens and Apollo 13. And Tom Arnold in a movie where he's actually tolerable. I honestly felt like Cameron's direction was, I don't have any lines for you, but you find out that your best friend and coworker's wife is having an affair, help comfort him. And he just pulled all of his personal experiences into this. This movie is as fun and entertaining as all hell, an action classic hands down, and a must-see for anyone. It covers just about all the action movie tropes that it borderline parodies itself in a delightful way without being too in-your-face about it. It just flows real nice, and it never feels dull or stale. Vitz's recommendations. Keeping with the Schwarzenegger train, I recommend The Last Action Hero, but in the direction of Spies in Love, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But if you're a game for a TV series, Spy X Family is a delightful, heartwarming, and charming watch. You know what? I'm sick of writing the emails. You guys write the email next time. Vitz.
That was funny. Vitz, you rock.
Vitz, Last Action Hero might eventually be an episode that I bring into play here because I think it's a very underrated movie.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So Scott got back to me.
About the suicides related to Avatar?
Yes. So I texted him frantically and I said, Scott, please tell me you remember this. Avatar was in theaters and people were killing themselves left and right after seeing it because they were so depressed that Pandora wasn't real. Please tell me you remember that. I'm live on the podcast right now. And he said, and I quote, this is a story that was told for sure. I don't know if it's true, but it was definitely in the culture. And I said, Dylan doesn't remember that. And he hasn't answered yet.
It's very much an urban legendy type thing. You know what I mean?
I guess
it's like,
so.
People were killing themselves left and right because of Avatar, and there kept being those hooks left on the back of people's car handles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like the only urban legend that comes to my mind right now that I can think of. So I went with that.
That's great. But I do remember, like, I think Scott saw it because, again, we were in high school. Maybe he was in college and I was a senior or something like that. But I remember he saw it. Maybe he saw it when he was in college and I didn't see it because I was at home. And I was like, why would I want to see that? Like, people are talking this is the best movie ever made and people are killing themselves. No, thank you. I'll stay home and watch Mean Girls.
I still have my I survived seeing Avatar in theater shirt.
Do you really?
No. Because nobody was killing themselves from Avatar.
Oh my God. All right. Well, maybe I'll send you that one next.
All right. Is it time to get to Redeemed and Dominant?
Please,
verdicts?
Dylan. It's been 20 minutes since I've talked about CrossFit. I'm getting itchy and I feel like I need more of it.
You guys couldn't see it before she said anything. Her muscles just started trembling at the mention of Redeemed and the Dominant. She was like, please.
CrossFit. I listen to this podcast now about cults. I think I mentioned it last time.
And they talked about CrossFit.
They talked about CrossFit, and I'm like very much now. At least I'm aware. Like, all right, I'm in a cult. I'm a cult member. I'm recruiting people. It's fine.
That's all right. I'm culty with my my Batman and such. You know, it happens. We're all part of some cult.
Yeah.
As long as you're not hurting other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a real live your life situation.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're the real cult.
Oh, there's several real cults. This is not a cult podcast. This is a movie podcast. Let's get back to Redeeming the Dominant.
Let's do it.
All right, Gab. I think it's time to get to the verdicts.
Let's get to the verdicts.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The guilty will be punished.
Sentence is death. Would you like to go first?
Yeah. So obviously I need to be honest with myself here. I love the sport of CrossFit. I love what the sport is becoming. I love the lifestyle that it presents. And to be honest with you, I love the guys who made this documentary. Shout out to Heber Cannon and Marston Sawyers, who are the Buttery Bros. They no longer work for CrossFit, but they do have a really fun YouTube channel called the Buttery Bros, where they work out with different CrossFit athletes and kind of showcase them. And it's really fun and exciting. And I think you would like that. If you at all give a shit about
the Buttery
CrossFit.
Bros below.
Yeah, let's link the Buttery Bros below. Shout out to them. They were both very kind. We met them at Wadapalooza as well. But I do understand that this documentary doesn't really do a great job if you are new to CrossFit. Now, that said, if you watched the 2017 games and then watched this documentary to kind of get some behind the scenes, I think it's really cool. I think that the sport of CrossFit is really exciting. I think whether you're an athlete or a spectator, it kind of gives everybody hope that they can do more than they think they're capable of and learn some of these things that at one point may seem out of reach. But I don't know that it is a movie to watch before you die. I think upon revisiting, I think CrossFit is a sport to get interested in before you die. I think the games is an event to watch before you die. I think the regional competitions are really fun to watch, but I can understand how, as somebody not knowing anything about the sport, this movie may not be a must see.
Like I said earlier in this episode, this is 100% Your Mask of the Phantasm, because that is a movie that like I'm so passionate about. And, you know, in my head, I can easily say like, it's a movie to watch before you die. Look at all these other people I know who love it. And like, I feel like, you know, if this episode was you, Corey, and Haley, like all three of you would agree that this is great.
Yeah.
From a sports documentary standpoint, I thought there was a lot wrong with it. Like it did a great job, you know, as somebody who worked for Major League Baseball, because it really did bring me back to, it felt like a 2-hour highlight reel.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you're seeking. If you do follow CrossFit at all and you were interested in seeing more angles and learning some behind the scenes, yeah, obviously I'd say watch it. If you don't know anything about this sport, it was 1000% inaccessible.
Yeah.
It focused on too many people. The audio wasn't so great at times. Not a movie to watch before you die for me.
Yeah.
You know, I think I hope I did a fair job of, I did not want to, much like you were kind to my Mask of the Phantasm, I did not want to come out here and be like, this is garbage, you're garbage for picking it. Like,
yeah. And I get it. And I think you're right. And when I watched it back, knowing we were going to do this and knowing that you didn't have a lot of experience with CrossFit, I was like, this didn't really do what I wanted it to do. But I don't think any of the documentaries would have done what I wanted them to do, because I think they're very niche.
Yes, this is very niche. So like I do feel like all the reviews and comments I found, except for those like 2 or 3 I read, were from people who are like, I love CrossFit. Like I think that's why it gets like, you know, that cult stigma upon it, because you're either diehard about this or you're not about this at all.
Yes.
So again, as you know, I'm a massive football fan. So I could be watching an NFL documentary that somebody else wouldn't give a shit about, and I would get something out of it because I already have so much knowledge built in.
Yeah.
But as somebody who was just, you know, being introduced to a documentary, like, you're going to have a hard time showing this to anybody who is not part of that niche.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. And I think the first time I watched it, and I didn't really know anything about CrossFit, I at least had a fitness background where I understood like kind of what they were doing and how it would feel. And, you know, I get how it would be a little niche. But here's my main question. It's not a movie to watch before you die, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be. I'm still going to watch it a million more times. Do you feel like how do you feel about CrossFit as a sport? And you don't have to be nice. I'm genuinely curious.
Sometimes ESPN does a thing where they do ESPN 8 the Ocho. Have you ever seen that?
No.
They do this thing, and it comes from the movie Dodgeball. So they'll actually broadcast, you know, on a random Saturday where there's no sports at a time of the year, they'll turn into ESPN 8 the Ocho, and they will show you, okay, here's a good example, Dodge Juggle, where there's one player on each team who is juggling bowling pins, and they are throwing dodgeballs, and like you have players on each side who are trying to stop them from hitting their juggler, and they're trying to take out the other team's juggler. Once in a while when that comes on, I'm like, this is great. Slippery stairs, where there are stairs that are like lubed up and greased up, and the people have to get to the top of the stairs. They can't get to the top of those stairs. What else is there on ESPN 8 the Ocho? There's just a bunch of stuff like that. World Chase Tag, where it is just like parkour trying to tag somebody, and it's like, wow, look at these motherfuckers go. If it was ESPN 8 the Ocho and I just turned it on and saw like motherfuckers jumping over bases of hail with medicine balls, I'd be like, I'll leave this on. But like, am I ever going to seek out CrossFit? No. You know what I mean? It's not about to supplant football for me.
Sure. I get it. Yeah, that's fair. What about I was secretly hoping that like with Giselle's upcoming race that she's training for, that maybe you guys would be like so inspired by the athleticism and like
it is an unobtainable amount of athleticism though. You're like, I don't have enough steroids for this. I don't know any IT guys.
But like I said earlier, I feel like I don't have like a major fitness background, but I guess I have 8 years of training, and in addition to
I can totally see how this lines up for you and how you can be passionate about it. I can see the crossover for you. It's not there for me. Yeah. I could see Batman doing CrossFit.
Yeah. Well, at one point, I don't know if it's this documentary or the previous one, but they say like, we're looking for the fittest on earth. We're like, how do you build Batman? And I was like, Batman, he's going to love this. But
it wasn't this one. I would have noticed if they brought up Batman.
They did. They're like, we're trying to build Batman in training up into the games. But yeah, I'm very passionate about this sport. Like I said, we just came in 3rd place in a competition, which was really exciting. And, we hope to be able to compete more at a higher level and win some money.
If you were competing, Gab, I would gladly watch, obviously.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
For Matt Fraser, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You'll just have to continue with your wonderful sponsorships and incredible gym.
Well, I'll tell you what, I will, if I ever see a really cool CrossFit thing on Instagram, I will send it to you. Because now I feel like at least you kind of get it. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I tried. I'm glad I got to talk about CrossFit. I'm glad some of my friends are listening to this podcast who would normally not ever. And I'm excited to see who's going to win the games this year. I think, to be honest with you, just for your knowledge, Ricky Garrard, who came in 2nd place at Wadapalooza, and this is something really funny too, and we're running out of time. Corey and I give all the athletes like funny names. So Ricky Garrard, of course, we call him Ricky Gervais. But there's another guy named Roman Krenikov from Russia, and we call him Rogaine Credit Card. So Ricky Gervais came in 2nd place to Rogaine Credit Card. I'm excited to see who's going to win this year, and yeah, I love CrossFit.
Yeah, you know what? If you watch CrossFit, please leave a comment below. Tell us what you think of this documentary. Tell us if you're not into CrossFit and you happen to see some of this, tell me what you think of it too. Send us some mail at movies2watchbeforeyoudie@gmail.com or leave us a voice message at
movies to watch at anchor.fm.
No, anchor.fm/movies to watch. What? Close enough.
We're running out of time.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Thank you. CrossFit. Hi, Haley.
Ricky Garrard has been extremely impressive at the 2017 Reebok CrossFit Games.
Have you taken steroids before?
No, never. If I did or had done it, I just couldn't look at my brother or my dad in the eyes.
Ricky tested positive at the CrossFit Games for 2 banned substances.